Well, folks, we have come to that time in the season that we've been waiting for since September. The moment where 12 teams will battle for the ultimate prize in the NFL, the Vincent Lombardi Trophy. The journey to Super Bowl 53 gets underway. Welcome to the Wild Card Round edition of the Blitz Zone. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Rosen. I'm coming to you live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York, where tonight we're going to get into the postseason action. This is the greatest time of the year. 12 great stories that led 12 amazing teams to this point in time. Now, they will settle it once and for all for this year. Who will be champion? Will it be in the AFC, the number one seeded team, the Kansas City Chiefs, led by probably the MVP winner this year, Patrick Mahomes, who had 50 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards on the season? That's unbelievable in it of itself right there with a great array of receivers. The defense, however, is a bit of a liability at times, but they've improved in the last few weeks. Then the number two seeded New England Patriots, who were a paltry 3-5 on the road. There was twice in the season where they lost 2 games in a row, but they were able to get themselves together in the last few weeks of the season, including the victory over the Jets week 17 to get the number 2 spot and at least host one playoff game at Gillette, where they've been a perfect 8-0 this year. Can Tom Brady get championship number 6 and move that much closer to Otto Graham's record of 7 championships? And on top of all that, the defense, is really outstanding. I'm looking forward to seeing what Brian Flores, who has been a name throughout the entire coaching carousel, what he will cook up for the Patriots defense side of things. Now, the number 3 seeded team, the Houston Texans, the team that basically started 0-3 on the year, ripped off 9 consecutive wins, including starting week 4 overtime in Indianapolis, winning 37-34 on a very questionable 4th and 4 decision by Frank Reich that 2 plays later led to the Texans getting the game-winning field goal and sparking that great run. Eventually, they ended that run against the Colts. They lost 24-21 back in Houston, but they ended up winning their final 2 out of their last 3. They win the division for the 5th time in the history of their franchise. And the fact that they were 4-12 last year and made it to this point, and without any injuries to boot, and the comeback sensation of J.J. Watt with 16 sacks, most in the AFC, 2nd overall in the NFL, and Davian Clowney together, they are one of the most fearsome pass rushing duos in the league. At number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. You want to talk about a great story right here? They went into the bye 4-5, hip injury with Joe Flacco. Unknown what was going to happen with their season because John Harbaugh's career, his job was on the line. Then all of a sudden, the rookie sensation comes in. Lamar Jackson, selected 32 overall out of Louisville, goes 6-1 in the final 7 games for the Ravens, averaging over 150 yards on the ground between him, the undrafted rookie Gus Edwards, and Kenneth Dixon on gas plays and some third down plays occasionally, and a defense that gave up no more than 280 yards, top 5 in points per game, takeaways, sacks, you name it, and get themselves the AFC North Championship for the first time, I believe, since 2012, and their first playoff appearance since 2015, ending a 3-year drought. Congratulations to the Ravens. The number 5 seeded LA Chargers, though most people need some water. Though most people call them the San Diego Chargers, it's not Freudian slip. It's the fact that they will always remain the faithful members of San Diego. But nonetheless, they play in a soccer stadium in Carson, California. These Raiders, led by Phillip Rivers, the only person from the 2004 quarterback draft class that has not won a Super Bowl championship. Ben Roethlisberger of the Steelers, 2 championships. Eli Manning, 2 championships. Philip Rivers, not even a Super Bowl appearance, let alone a championship. Can he get to this point? Will he finally end the drought and get his title that he's been longing for since he started putting on cleats as a kid, playing Pee Wee football, getting through the college ranks as well, and then finally getting selected originally by the Giants. And Eli was supposed to be a Charger. The trade heard around the world, and guess how it all? Well, we all know how the story went from there. Now, will Rivers' story end with the Lombardi Trophy? Well, he's got a good array of receivers. He's got two distinct running backs, and Melvin Gordon, who is 100% this time. He was out for some weeks with a knee injury. And Austin Eckler is a good complementary back. Some good receivers, especially his downfield threat, Keenan Allen, and his old friend Antonio Gates, probably one of the best quarterback tight end duos in NFL history. A future Hall of Famer for certain for both of them. Now, the number 16, the Indianapolis Colts. Another great story right here. This was a team that when they lost in that fateful overtime game, Week 4 against the Texans, 37-34, they went 1-3. They ended up losing their next two games to the Patriots, 38-24, and to the Jets, 42. I was at that game with my good friend Shane, and the fact that they went 1-5, it looked like was going to be a long season for Andrew Luck and company. But all contraire mon frere. What do they do the next 10 games? They go and win 9 of those games, including to the wire, Week 17, in Tennessee. Win or go home, and they won in the biggest way possible, demolishing the Tennessee Titans with Blaine Gabbert as their starting quarterback, and Andrew Luck having what is amounting to a comeback player of the year type of season with over 2,000 yards. No, with more than two, with over 4,000 passing yards on the year. And the fact that he has not been sacked, he's one of the least sacked quarterbacks. The team itself, the offensive line has transformed for the better. And that's one of the reasons why, especially Quentin Nielsen, who they got out of Notre Dame, is probably one of the best parts of that O-line. And that's why, Andrew Luck has had such a tremendous season at quarterback. And then Marlon Mack making his plays running back, but the defense has dramatically improved from what we've seen in years past, and that is really something to say about the team. And Darius Leonard, who had over 150 total tackles, not even recognized to get a Pro Bowl selection, which is a crying shame, should definitely be in the running for Rookie of the Year, and didn't even play all 16 games. Now, on the NFC side of things, the number 1 seeded New Orleans Saints, led by Drew Brees, talk about the least sacked quarterback, and yet again, the most accurate passer in a single season, 76% of the time. Quick release passes, good receivers able to get open, including Michael Thomas, yet another season of over 100 receptions. And then you add the fact that you have Alvin Kamara, who had to start the first 4 games without his compatriot Mark Ingram. Ingram comes back from suspension, business as usual, and they end up going 13-3 in the year, winning their second straight NFC South crown. The road to Super Bowl 53 on the NFC side of things will go through the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. So they could go from one Mercedes stadium to another if everything goes correctly. That's right, Super Bowl 53 at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, or Hot Atlanta. Maybe the Saints will get even hotter as the weeks go on. Now, the number 2 seeded team, the LA Rams, led by one of the youngest coaches in NFL history, Sean McVay, in his sophomore season, and the 3rd season, of course, for Jared Goff. And yet again, business as usual. And the defense with Aaron Donald's tremendous contract of over $160 million, gets 19.5 sacks on the year, leading the NFL. Still broke the record for defensive tackles, yet 3 shy of the overall record. But then Ndamukong Suh being brought in with Michael Brockers right there. The acquisitions of Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters in the secondary really to keep things going. That's why this team is on fire. and they are going to basically make they're going to put other teams on notice. Even if they did lose to the Saints, this time they're not going to make the same mistakes again. And you know what? If they play the Eagles, this time they'll know what to do against Foles as well, if that ever comes to pass. The number 3 seeded team. And this is another great sensational story. The Chicago Bears. This was a team the last 4 years finished dead last in the NFC North. This time around, Matt Nagy coming in from Kansas City was the offensive coordinator, worked as a coach with Andy Reid in Philadelphia, yet comes in, changes the whole culture of the team. They bring in players like Trey Burton, who was part of the Philly special with the Eagles last year in their first Super Bowl, on top of which you get some other Taylor Gabriel, and Trubisky in his sophomore year has really great improvements throwing the ball and his ability to run with 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. Then you add in the biggest acquisition of all time, getting Khalil Mack, a once-in-a-generational pass rusher. You know, to me, him playing with the Bears reminds me of the Fridge, Perry, the great Dick Butkus, players like that. And it's just unbelievable what he can do, on so many parts of the field. And even Brian Urlacher comes to mind too. And he revolutionized not only the team, but the entire NFC North. The Bears, for the first time in 8 years, win the division. They go from last to first. Matt Nagy, or Nagy, however you pronounce his name, should be Coach of the Year for his efforts. This team was number 1 in, especially on defense, points per game, giving up no more than 17.7 on the year. And then you add Eddie Jackson, their safety. Hopefully he's all right to play this week. 6 interceptions on the season, most of which returned for touchdown receptions, for touchdowns. And the running back duo of Tara Cohen and Jordan Howard, you can't say any more than that. So congratulations to the Bears. And then the Dallas Cowboys, a team that missed the postseason last year for the second year in 3 years in the Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott era. They win the NFC East. At 3-5, things were looking really grim right now, and Jason Garrett's job was on the line. They go into the bye. They acquire Amari Cooper. Ipso presto, they win 7 more games to go 10-6 in the year, win the division for the 3rd time in 5, second in the last 3, including winning last week's finale in a game that had nothing on the line except just getting another win, but still eke out a 36-35 win over the Giants on a masterful 4th down 32-yard pass to, of all people, Cole Beasley with both feet in bounds, and the conversion to Michael Gallup. That was really great playmaking right there. And so the Cowboys, my hat's off to you for the season that you've had. Let's see if Amari Cooper can really get you guys over that hump and win your first championship since the mid-90s. Jerry Jones has been waiting a long time for that trophy. The city of Dallas, North Texas wants it badly. Let's rope them a Vince Lombardi title. Number 5, the Seattle Seahawks from the Emerald City. This was supposed to be the year they were rebuilding, but they went to the Wizard of Oz and they asked him, please, can we win a championship? Not really. I was just trying to cleverly use Emerald City and Wizard of Oz, but nonetheless, they started 0-2. They actually beat the Giants week 3, 24-13. They go on a nice run. The running game is what really made it sensational. On top of the hard-hitting defense, the rebuild was this year, and it came out in spades, and they won the 5th spot, the first wild card spot. They're at 9-7 after last year losing in the finale and getting eliminated from postseason contention. This time, they're back for the 6th time in 7 years with Russell Wilson at the helm. Congratulations to Russell, and also to Chris Carson, who made a huge difference in their rushing offense. Number 1 overall on the year. And finally, number 16, the Philadelphia Eagles, last year's champions. First time in their city's history beating the New England Patriots. Will they become the first team since the 2003 and 2004 Patriots to repeat as champions? That remains to be seen. But Nick Foles coming in Week 15, leading the comeback, of course, beating the LA Rams on Sunday Night Football, defeating the Texans in their home finale 32-30, and then finally going on the road to Washington, shutting them out, along with a Vikings loss to the Bears. They get the 6th and final spot. Now they have a chance to defend their title, to defend their keep. Will the Eagles do it? Will their talons be able to claw onto that championship, or will somebody snatch it away from them? All these stories and then some. 12 unique stories. Somebody's story will end with a championship. The other 11 with a lot of questions in the offseason of what could we have done. All right. Before we get into the Week 17 recaps and the postseason talk, let's get into some of the stories now that the season is over. Gotta get some water. Refreshing. As you know, when any season ends comes the bitter period, the bitter day of Black Monday. That is, as I mentioned last week, the day after the Monday after the regular season ends, in which coaches, coordinators, and anybody working for an organization finds out whether or not they have a job to return to next year. 8 such coaches, and that's including the 2 who were previously fired during the season, found out they don't have a job for 2019 as head coach. In our own neck of the woods, the Jets ended their season 4-12. That's one less win than they had in 2017 at 5-11. Repeating as the number 3 overall pick, having the number 3 overall pick. They're going to have the second most cap space, and they're going to have a new head coach because Todd Bowles was finally let go. Ever since the Jets in 2015 went 11-5, still didn't make the postseason because they lost on the final game of the year. 11 wins. 14 wins actually since that 2015 season. Things have not been the same for the Jets since that year with Fitzpatrick when he threw those 3 fourth-quarter interceptions. And that was it. They lose to the Bills in that game, and the Steelers were able to get in the final spot. Had the Jets won that game, they would have been in the playoffs. And a lot of people projected them to do a lot of damage and possibly go all the way in 2015. Could have ended the drought from 1969. Well, fortunately, didn't happen then, and it's not going to happen this year. And what's really insane, since the year 2000 in the AFC East, if you count all the teams in the division, there will now be 27. It's 27 head coaches since 2000. And of course, the only team since 2000 to have had one head coach, Bill Belichick, with the Super Bowl winning or 5-time Super Bowl winning New England Patriots. While the Bills and Dolphins both have 10, and that's the Dolphins including their new head coach coming next year. And for the Jets, this will be their 6th head coach in the last 19 years, counting, coming up next year. Who are the Jets going to get? Now, there are some thoughts out there. Mike McCarthy did come in for an interview. As you know, he was fired from the Green Bay Packers after they lost for the first time at home since 1949 to the Arizona Cardinals. An embarrassing season that went nowhere for them, so they decided just to let him go, have Joe Philbin take over for the rest of the year. Mike McCarthy is going to be a hot commodity for a team. After all, the guy, 12 seasons, multiple playoff appearances, a Super Bowl championship to his name. The Jets, if they would have been smart that day, would have never let McCarthy leave Forum Park without signing on the dotted line. But there's probably going to be some other people. I wouldn't be shocked to hear Eric Bieniemy. And if that name is not familiar to you, he is the now offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. And those are hot people to get. After all, they worked under Andy Reid, and his line has been pretty successful so far. You look at Doug Peterson. was an Andy Reid guy. Won the Eagles a title for the first time in their history. Matt Nagy was an Andy Reid guy. Went to the Bears, got them their first division title in 8 years. So if Eric Bieniemy, if I'm even pronouncing that name correctly, if the Jets are going to hire an offensive guy, I would definitely want to see him possibly as the head coach, or Cliff Kingsbury, the coach at Texas Tech, who reminds me of Ryan Gosling's twin brother. But beyond that, what he's done with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, he could possibly work well with Sam Darnold. That's what the Jets need, is an offensive-minded coach who can develop Darnold into the quarterback we all know he can be. And another name that may come up too, Adam Gase, who in certain circles is considered the quarterback whisperer. If you look at his work with Peyton Manning when he had that Super Bowl 50 winning season, and then coming, of course, to the Miami Dolphins, hoping to do the same thing with Ryan Tannehill. Unfortunately, didn't work out, and he got fired for his efforts. And I'll tell you, the thing with Adam Gase, though, a lot of the players distrusted him this past year. He let a lot of Jay Ajayi traded away. He traded Jarvis Landry away because he had differences with him. Players felt like he treated Ryan Tannehill differently than the rest of the squad, and there was a lot of bitter resentment at times. There was some drama under his tutelage, too. Some that wasn't even his fault as well. Overall, the Dolphins, yet again, had a chance this year when they were at 6-6, and things just did not go well for them down the stretch, including that embarrassing 42-17 loss on the road in Buffalo. That was it for Stephen Ross. Now we're hearing possibly Jim Harbaugh, because Stephen Ross, as you know, is a Michigan alumnus and a big booster. In fact, he has a business school there. So there are a lot of ties to Ann Arbor, and with the current head coach, Jim Harbaugh, who right now makes a robust $7.20 million, he would have to match that offer and then some to lure Jim Harbaugh back to the pros. But the problem is with Jim, he has yet to beat Ohio State in 4 years, and that's the one thing. If you're a Michigan coach, you want to do that. Something tells me I don't think Jim is leaving until he gets that crossed off his list. So I don't think he's leaving college. He's staying at Ann Arbor. But for the Dolphins themselves, if they're going to go after anybody, I hope they can get Mike McCarthy on their team. I think he would work out perfectly there, develop whoever the quarterback is. If it's Tannehill, that's a $22 million cap hit you're looking at for next season. Something tells me I think Joe Flacco will come down to South Florida. With Mike McCarthy as the coach, they could do some wonderful things next year. Possibly overtake the Patriots in the AFC East. Remains to be seen. Good luck to both AFC East teams on finding their new head coach. Dirk Cutter, of course, let go after 3 years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was a season that started 2-0 with the Fitz Magic, Express, 4 touchdowns each in the first 3 games, 2 consecutive 400-yard games, and then all of a sudden, multiple losing streaks, the defensive coordinator Mike Smith getting fired in November, and just utter calamity deciding whether you're going to have Jameis Winston, who had 10 interceptions in just 3.5 games, versus Fitz Magic, or in some people's minds, Fitz Tragic, or his real name, Fitzpatrick, not doing his job. Either way, it was that insane roller coaster ride from hell. And the reason Cutter was even made the permanent head coach, because there was a lot of interest after the work he did in 2015 with Jameis Winston. They didn't make the playoffs, but he still did a good job, Jameis, in his first year with the squad in 2015. And the Glazer family were worried that he was going to be lured to another team, so they decided to make Cutter the permanent head coach. And then in 3 years, well, he went 19-29, and it just did not work out in the end. So good luck to Tampa on who their next coach is going to be. The Broncos, for the first time since 1971-72, consecutive losing seasons, 5-11 this past year, 6-10 this past year, 5-11 the previous year. For Vance Joseph, let go after 2 seasons. Man, it's just, it really is insane that they would just do this to the guy. But at the same time, both seasons in which they started off with promising seasons, you'll get the 3-0 start in 2017, lost 8 straight games for the first time in decades. Unfortunately, 5 wins. Then this year, started 3-1. Another dry spell. They go 6-10 on the year. There were games in which you look at some of the play calling decision. The game that ended their season, the Saturday night performance in Cleveland, not going for it on 4th down. The game in which McManus missed the field goal against Houston. That was another example right there of some questionable play calling and some terrible mismanagement by Vance Joseph. He'll probably be a defensive coordinator somewhere again, because that's what he did well when he was with the Miami Dolphins, but he's not going to be head coach anytime soon. If he is, good luck. That's all I got to say. Steve Wilkes was let go after just 1 3-13 season with the Arizona Cardinals. Congratulations, Arizona. You got the number 1 overall draft pick. That's all you got out of this season. Otherwise, it was utterly deplorable to watch. One of the worst home records at 1-7 since they started in the state of Arizona in 1988. 2 of their 3 wins were against the 49ers, and the other, was, as I mentioned earlier, was against the 49ers. For the first time since Harry Truman was president of this country. That's it. That's the only good spots about the Cardinals. Otherwise, Josh Rosen is he's a work in progress, but he needs a coach that can work well with him. That's why I'm even thinking possibly Gase for that job, because he always had a thing for Josh Rosen, and he was always a big fan of his. So that could be a marriage made in heaven or hell, depending on if things don't work out well, if he does get hired there. Well, let's see. As for the Cleveland Browns, as we all know, earlier this year, Hugh Jackson was let go, brought back to the Bengals fold as a special assistant to Marvin Lewis, because Marvin Lewis, after all, has a soft spot for the guy, even endorsing him for something I'll talk about in a bit. But I'll be honest, he is not a great coach, Hugh Jackson, and you brought in Greg Williams as the interim coach, and look what he did. They were almost a victory shy of having their first winning season in almost 11 years. But the Cleveland Browns right now are going to be looking for a head coach. I would love to see Greg Williams get what he deserves, and that's that job right there. But you never know with the organization, because with the ties that Josh McDaniels has with the general manager John Dorsey from their days in New England, that's a possibility. Flores could be the next coach for the Browns. So there's a lot of talk out there. I'll find out. I'll get more of this next week on the carousel. And finally, Marvin Lewis, after 16 years being the second longest tenured coach in the NFL, actively behind Bill Belichick, was finally let go. 0-7 in the postseason. Yep. On top of which, 3 consecutive losing seasons. That was it. It was a mutual parting of the ways. And a record of 131, 122, and 3. He does have the most wins in franchise history as a coach, but they had to move on. This was his last chance. If the Bengals didn't fire him after this year, then I'd say they really don't care about the organization going forward. Now, is Andy Dalton your future quarterback? Even though he's had 2 consecutive season-ending thumb injuries in the last 2 years. A.J. Green is definitely a premier receiver, but he needs somebody who can work better with him. The defense, which was atrocious, at one point gave up 3 consecutive 500-yard games, the most in the modern-day Super Bowl era, which led to the firing of Terrell Austin, and Marvin Lewis having to take up the duties as defensive coordinator along with being head coach. So everything just went straight to hell for Cincinnati this year, and another miserable season. Let's see what they do in the offseason. The Detroit Lions did part ways with Jim Bob Cooter, one of the most awesome names in all of football.